always. Chaos is my middle name. So Felix is a founding member. Felix is now an Octopus Professor. So happy you're organizing this brain lunch with us, Felix. Felix used to be a trauma surgeon. Maybe you hated when people say that, Felix, but I love that story. I'm always thinking, how the hell I would be so happy to be a trauma surgeon. And he just said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. Such an interesting person. So we're doing a brain lunch. Brain lunch is always fast, interesting, especially for nonlinear thinkers. We think fast, we connect fast. Everything is around turning on our nonlinear thinking. It's tuning into the human mycelium. Thank you, OptiMatch, because we will use your tool, Jennifer, to really dive into that OptiMatch as well, and seek the human mycelium and make all these connections. And dropping out of the laws of thought. I love that. For me, dropping out of the laws of thought is we're conditioned. We've been trained. We've been to school, to university, or whatever. Our parents, our siblings, neighbors, teachers, gurus, coaches, everybody is sharing information, and that creates the laws of thought, and we think that's the reality. Fuck it, it's not always the reality. So drop out of the laws of thought, turn on your nonlinear thinking, and tune into the human mycelium. That's why we're doing this brain lunch together with Felix today. For anyone who doesn't want to be on our recordings on YouTube, just send me a message. And then I will give the floor to you, Felix. We have 55 minutes left. Go for it. Create something beautiful. And we're so happy you're doing this for us. And thank you, Zen and Chrissy, for joining us as well. And Joanna and Michelle Rez, thank you for being here. And the floor is yours, Felix.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Perry. First of all, so excited for all of you to be here. Like Perry said, I want this to be fast and interesting as well. The ideas I'm going to share with you are actually going to be fairly short. I want engagement from you. I want to hear your questions, your thoughts, your feedback, and what you think of this idea, how it applies in your life, how it could have applied in your life in recent days, weeks, months. And I'm just looking here at all the other people that are here. So Carrie and Michelle, I see you're skipping the LVW for this as well. If you were there a few weeks ago when I gave my talk there, it's the same stuff. So hopefully, actually here we can go deeper, because over there we really didn't get that opportunity to go as deep as I would have liked to have. So hopefully we'll get go a little deeper today with all of your input and feedback and comments and suggestions. As Perry said, I am a trauma surgeon by training, and I walked away from that. I've since turned to coaching. I think, like most nonlinear thinkers, I get bored quickly. So I'm always looking for new challenges, new opportunities, and my curiosity is just endless. So, I did what I could with trauma surgery, and I decided it was time to move on to something different, something new. But as my background in trauma should reveal, I have studied anatomy quite extensively. As a matter of fact, I've had my finger in every space and body orifice there exists. There's not a place in the human body that I haven't seen or touched over the course of my life. And yet, I'm here to tell you that we have four brains. Four brains. Sí, pero por favor, mute. Gracias. All right. Getting back to the topic of the four brains. So there's the four brains. We think, obviously, naturally, we have this brain up here in our skull. That's the first one we always think about. But even that is divided into a left and a right brain, really. And the most fascinating book on that topic is a pretty thick tome. But if you want to go deeper on left and right brain thinking, Ian McGilchrist's book is absolutely the Bible on that. The Master and His Emissary is the title of that book, written some time ago. And it goes deep on the differences between left and right brain thinking. But my theory here goes much deeper. So what are the four brains, and how should you think about them? How should you utilize them? So the way I look at these four brains is as consultants, the way we make decisions in our lives, how we can make better decisions in not just our lives, but hopefully we can expand this idea to other people to implement in their lives as well. So there's a hierarchy to that as well. You should consult your first brain first, followed by your second, third, and then fourth brain last. So they're not all equal. They come at it from different angles, different directions. They have different perspectives. They base their decisions on past experiences that you may have had that are all different because these four brains are all different. So the first brain is very simply your heart. Yes, your heart. You should always make decisions primarily out of a place of love, a love for other human beings involved, right? A love for yourself, your friends, your family, the world at large. So whenever you make a decision, the first question you should ask yourself, are you making this from a place of love? And that's where your heart comes in, okay? So the one thing I should probably say too is the way you remember these four brains is from an acronym that I sort of stole and adapted from the programming world. So in the programming world, when it comes to data storage on hard drives, for example, there's this idea of first in, first out, or last in, last out, FIFO, LILO. And so that acronym can also be applied to these four brains, right? So it's the same thing, data in, data out. It's the same way we make decisions. So the acronym we use here is CICO. So the first C is your core, your corazon, your heart, right? So that's the first C. That's your first brain. Always make decisions from a place of love first. What's your second brain then? Your second brain, the I, is your intestines. Yes, your intestines. Your intestines actually have a fantastic neural network. It goes back to the gut feeling you might have about a situation. There's some truth to that. There's something truly not just visceral about the gut feeling. There is some neural connections between your gut and your brain. If you look at your gut, it has hundreds of millions of neurons. And yet, if you look at basic biology, the simplest of simple of brains that we define as a brain, as a functioning brain, comes from a little nematode worm, has like 300 neurons. So if 300 neurons can put together something that we define as a brain, the way we think about it from the neurologic structures, well, then our gut is much more than that, right? Hundreds of millions of neurons. So the whole gut-brain connection from a scientific standpoint is not entirely understood yet. We're beginning to make inroads into that, and we're starting to have a better feeling for what that really means, how the gut really influences our decisions, our mood, our emotions, right? We know a lot about the gut microbiome, and if you eat shit, you're going to feel like shit. But there's way more to that. There's something deeper to that. And that's what I mean when you have a decision to make. Lean into that gut feeling because your gut knows something that your brain up here doesn't, because it's a brain of its own. It just doesn't have the same ways of communicating and thinking as your brain up here does. So that is your second brain, your gut, your intestines. That's the I. CIC now stands for cranium, cerebrum, whatever you want to call the thing between your ears. That's your actual brain. And like I alluded to before already, it's actually divided into a left and a right brain. And more often, our left brain tends to be the more dominant one. And that really is only because the left brain for most people is the language center. So that's where our language comes from. And we communicate with language, right? I'm speaking to you in English right now. We create these words that have meanings to us. And that all comes from the left brain. The left brain is very categorical. If it cannot put something in a predefined bucket, it doesn't know what to do with it. And that's when ideas get thrown out. The right brain doesn't think in buckets. The right brain thinks much more globally. It takes the bigger picture, the 30,000-foot view, if you will. It has a much better understanding of how things influence our lives on a grander time scale, for example, right? The left brain is, again, very categorical, very time-oriented. The right brain is much more globally thinking. So when we consult our third brain, we have this problem of the left brain wanting to put things into bucket, categorizing things, labeling things, but the right brain having a much broader perspective on things. And when we talk in my world as coaching, when we talk about alignment coaching, what I've come to find is that we're really just bringing the left and the right brain hemispheres into alignment, into balance. We're sort of decreasing the dominance of the left and increasing the power that the right brain has on the decisions we make in life. So that's your third brain. And as you can see, it only comes in third for a reason, because the logic that the brain puts out is often flawed. I mean, we have always said to err is human, right? It's human. we're flawed, we make mistakes. And a lot of that comes again from that left brain thinking, having to categorize everything. So that's why your brain up here only comes in third, because your heart, if you make decisions out of love, will be a much more profound decision you can make for yourself and everyone else involved. Your gut feeling tells you something that a lot of us ignore, right? We have to tune into that. And then your third brain, like I said, is the logic stuff up here that we think of when we talk about a brain. But in reality, it has flaws, and we know that. And so you should only consult that as a third consultant in that chain of events, right? So your heart first, your intestines, and then your brain. Now, there's a fourth brain, and I know we're all adults here. So the O, I'll let you all figure out what the O stands for, but that's the gonads. That's the stuff between your legs. That's your sexual organ. And if you think about it, sometimes you'll find yourself, let's say at the bar on a Friday night, you're lonely, and you find another human being who you're attracted to. And at that moment, you're going to be making decisions from a more biologic standpoint. You're going to make those decisions based on some sexual needs that may need to be fulfilled, and not based out of love for yourself or the other person. Maybe your gut feeling might even tell you, oh, stay away from that person. But your fourth brain is saying, no, we want this person in our lives right now, tonight. Of course, your logical brain would also have some influence on that and say, actually, the way to go about this is, we should go about this X, Y, and Z, right? But your fourth brain will then try to override things and say, no, we have some very basic biologic sexual needs that need to be fulfilled. We're doing this tonight. And so that's why the fourth brain is included as well, but it should be your last resort. That should be your fourth brain you consult. You should consult your heart first, your intestines, then your brain up here, and then your gonads as a last resort. So those are the four brains. And the question I really want to offer all of you at this point to think about is, think about a big decision that you had in your life recently, come across either you or something you witnessed in your life, where the decision outcome would have been different if you had consulted these four brains in that order, right? If you had first made that decision out of love, or someone else had made that decision out of love. What did the gut tell you, right? What was that gut feeling about the situation? Did your gut maybe tell you something different than what your brain ultimately told you logically to do, right? A lot of times the fourth brain isn't really necessarily consulted. Although there are instances, I was just doing some implicit bias training for my medical license, and one of the topics that came up is these biases in some of the scenarios on having an attractive female in the room, for example, right? A lot of male-based, white male. That's our standard in medicine, unfortunately. But so there's an attractive female in the room. How does your decision change? And so there are times, even in professional situations, when that fourth brain starts, wants to have its little input, but it really shouldn't. That's why it's fourth, right? That's why it's not first, second, or third. It's fourth for a reason. You should really consult those other brains first. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about this? What are your thoughts? And I want to hear some ideas and examples from your own life, from decisions that you have made in recent times where consulting your four brains in this order could have had a different outcome on what actually transpired.
May I offer something on this, Felix?
Absolutely. Oh, Jennifer, there you are. Absolutely. Please.
Yeah, so a practice that I've been cultivating for years, I'm a huge fan of heart math. So I first learned about the four brains and the heart part of the brain. Dr. Roland McCready is a friend of mine, the scientist there. They've been studying the heart-brain coherence and all of that for about 40 years. And so one of the techniques I've been using for about 4 years now is I check in intuitively on everything I'm going to do in the day. I literally, at the end of my meditation practice, I will talk out loud to myself. And some people feel it as a heart thing. Some people hear it more auditorily. Some people feel it in their gut of kind of like a yeah or no. And I go through that process of, say, 20 or 30 things in my day. Am I going to go to this Octopus brain lunch thing today? Is it in my highest and best good to go? Today, for a funny example, I was supposed to be in Greece meeting a potential business collaborator the second week of June. And this morning when I asked intuitively, I said, is it in my highest and best good to meet Jake? Yes. Am I going to meet him in Greece on this weekend? No, he's going to have an update. Now, for me, I actually hear things. It's not just a heart, but most of us have like a heart yes or heart no. And then as we clarify this, we can actually get more in tune and aligned with our hearts, our intestines, and eventually our brain and the other organs, by going through and asking ourselves a series of yes and no questions that we can then validate and see how accurate our intuitive wisdom is on that. Have you tried anything like that, Felix?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And I agree with you that intuition is so important, right? That's what I mean is the heart and the intestines are, thinking organs, if you will. And a lot of us are not attuned to that, right? A lot of us just think with this stuff up here, really the left brain most commonly. And that's really what's limiting a lot of us from expanding our reach, from expanding our potential. And so I agree with you. I think going inward and having that insights into yourself and asking yourself those questions, being curious and pushing your limits is so important. Now, the other thing you mentioned was meditation, right? And meditation is something that I think a lot of people, myself included, don't fully understand to a point where we can truly maximize it. It takes a lot of practice, right? I'm just not there yet. Meditation has been something that really has only come into my life in the last year or two, I would say. And I'm still very much an amateur at it compared to some of my friends who have done it for years and years and years and really go deeper on that. The third component of all of that I was just thinking about was with meditation, with going deep, with going inside, and especially focusing on the heart. Something very simple that we all do every day in order to sustain life. We have to do, and yet most of us don't understand how to do it well, and that is breathing. And so if we actually practice breathing and do breathing exercises, what that will actually do for us is, and Dave Gieselman had a fantastic chat with that over on the ILVW, and he's a fantastic breath coach to reach out to as well. He's got some sessions on weekends that are free to attend. But if you do breath work right, it down regulates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, and up regulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system. And what that will do is it'll decrease your heart rate. It'll also change your emotions about a given situation. You go out of that fight or flight response, out of that scarcity, out of that anxiety, and you become much calmer, which I think translates a little bit into what you were saying, Jennifer, about the insights you can then have about yourself. Because if you are in that fight or flight response, all you're worried about is survival. That's all you can think about. You don't have the ability in that moment to have that intuition, that insight, that going deep in on yourself. And so if we all practice some breathing techniques and some breath work and focus more on regulating even our own heart rate through that, we could be much more in tune with ourselves, go inwards, and maybe even be better meditators. How does that resonate with you? Those are sort of my first few thoughts.
Absolutely. And I knew I want to get to the other ladies, Lydia and to Dan as well. If I may just offer something, that is everything HeartMath does. To your point, this is how they've studied heart-brain coherence and the physiological response, to your point, to quiet the amygdala, the animalistic brain, and give us access to our higher functioning brain. So easy to do for anybody in the room. You can do it anytime, eyes open or closed, and use that then as the catalyst to go into this deeper state to kind of ask about your day. All you have to do is focus your attention in the area of your heart or chest and imagine that your heart itself is doing the breathing. Breathing a little slower and a little deeper than usual. Into the count of 5, out to the count of 5 is idealistic from a physiological standpoint, but even if you do it in 2 or 3 seconds, that's more than most of us do. And if you do several rounds of that, in that place, you've regained access, you've surpassed your amygdala and gone back up into the higher brain functions. And then you're able to hear that deeper wisdom and quiet the noise. So I love that and agree wholeheartedly, Felix. And I'll turn it back over to you and everyone else.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was just thinking, I agree with you. It's something that we all can do in very short moments. I do it when I drive, for example, because it's a moment where I definitely have some ability to focus specifically on my breathing. And then throughout the day, it's very simple. I did have an episode with Dave Gieselman on my podcast where he explains his 3 breathing techniques. So good episode to check out if anybody is interested in learning more about Dave or the breathing techniques that he has to share. I don't know if Lydia or Dan was first, but whichever one of you is first, let's hear from you.
Lydia was first.
All right, Lydia, it's all you.
the way it tends to work on Zoom is that the person who puts their hand up goes to the left and then they go in order to the right because of the way that we think. But I don't know if we all think that way. So anyway, I would I would like to comment on this is a beautiful overview for people who really don't have that access or who might not realize that they have that access. I'm lucky enough, and I will say lucky. I think I've worked on this, but really, it's very natural for me to breathe slowly. So I'm the slowest breather I know all the time, unless perhaps I'm going to jump or hike in something very vertical, right? But I tend to be able to access that. Still, I access it intuitively, and I'm naturally intuitive. So when you said that the heart and the gut, basically, or heart first and then gut, I realized that I think that mine are intertwined in the way that I work with them. I am naturally intuitive. I worked really hard at one part in my life to turn off my intuition because of some painful stuff that was going on, and out of what I believed at the time naively was respect. And I had to turn that back on and allow that, take down those barriers. But the intuition, I'm a medical intuitive, but I don't think that I'm any more medical intuitive than just an intuitive. So, and in my intuition, I will say that the breathing is something that when you do study breathing, if you do this, intuitively notice what feels right. Like really listen to yourself about what feels right, because there's a lot of stuff out there about breathing. There's some stuff that I don't agree with about breathing. As someone who has been a breather and has taught this for brass instruments and for singing and for integrating the mind and the body and the minds and the body and the minds and the minds, there is a place where if we do hold the breath, in many of us, you'll find that that creates a panic response. And so you don't want to spend that much time on that holding the breath, on a box breathing, a typical box breathing, if that doesn't feel good to you, if that doesn't calm you down. Breathing is incredibly important. But, you know, not all breathing is for you. So that's just my 2 cents on how that's affected me and what I've learned, if that's helpful. But I tend to use that intuition first. My logic is really strong, so sometimes it likes to come in and shout, but but the intuition is what goes first, and I really have to honor that in myself. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that. And so there's a few thoughts that come to mind right off the bat. First one is the vagus nerve innervates the heart as well as the gut. So if you have that connection, you may just have a very strong connection between the heart and the gut through the vagus nerve. I mean, there's a bunch of other nerves that go to the heart and a bunch of other nerves that also go to the intestine, but by and large, the major highway for both organs is the vagus nerve. So there is a shared neural connection between the two. So that can very well be the case for you. And I agree with you on the breathing side of things too. For me, I found that the holding the breath part, if I do it for too long, can be, not necessarily panic, but it definitely is more of a sympathetic response at that point than a parasympathetic response for me. So it's more of a stimulating response rather than a calming response, a coming down response, right? And I think that at the very basic level, if we're going to do like a very broad overview of breathing techniques. If we're going to go more towards parasympathetic, calming down response, the simplest thing you got to do is make sure you exhale. You're letting the breath out is longer than you inhale, because on the inhale, your sympathetic nervous system gets stimulated. On the exhale, the parasympathetic nerves gets stimulated. And that's a very broad generalization, but I agree with you that
Uh-oh, am I the only one who's not hearing Felix anymore, or?
I think he's frozen.
Oh, he left even. He's doing some breathing techniques now by
It's-
himself, probably. Oh, here he's back.
I'm back. I'm back.
Yeah, we lost you,
but
Felix. Yeah.
nah, it's honestly my internet connection over the last week or so has been absolute crap. So sorry about that. I still haven't figured out what the problem there is. But it's been hit or miss. Some days are better than others. I don't know why. It's
We
rock
thought you
solid.
were doing a breather, taking a breather.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know where I lost you guys, but I don't know when and where I cut out. But I know Dan had his hand up. So Dan, what did you want to add, ask, suggest?
Well, it's not really to ask. This has been very eye-opening for me. And kind of the first thing that hit me was, why the heck don't they teach this stuff, when you're 12 years old? Because when I look at, the four brains and what they mean and how they interact, I think it becomes an evolutionary process, and it changes over your life. And I'll use my own life as an example. So, when you're a 15 to 18-year-old male, every decision starts with brain 4. And I mean, let's face it, that's the way it is. So then as you progress out of that and you start through post-secondary education, professional training, I think you're more or less forced in. So let's call it from your 20s to your 30s. You're kind of forced in where you're always using brain 3 most of the time, because you're so busy learning and studying and establishing position that you don't think about those other things. However, after you have some of that experience between your so I guess about your 30s to your 40s, maybe your 50s, you now have some experience. You've got some life behind you. You've forgotten about brain 4 to some extent, although hopefully not totally. But now you have the ability to start using brain 2 more, because your gut does kick in. I know as I got more and more experience, I did a lot of things by gut. Maybe they weren't the smartest things, but if my gut said do it or don't do it, I typically followed my gut. Then when you get into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and older, I think it does almost totally revert the other way. So now you are using your brain 4 most of the time. And so each one of those are always shifting. But I think in what I see is at certain stages in your life, there's always a predominant brain, from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And obviously 1 is, as we all know, as we get older, that 1 is the most important, probably, because if we're making decisions from the heart, and it always seems to turn out better than sometimes, just thinking the black and white pros and cons and making a decision that you're not going to like, but it still makes sense because there's more pros than cons. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to throw in there. And that's why I say this is the kind of stuff that I believe it's like teaching a 10-year-old kid how to balance a checkbook. This is such an important aspect of life. I don't know why this is not taught in a life skills course, in grade 3 or whenever you're 10 years old or 12 years old. I don't know that anymore. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, absolutely. And I think Karen's comment here to that is, I think, very much in line to why this isn't taught in regular standard, schools. And I want to use the term normal because my daughter just taught me something very interesting about that. But it seems like all of linear systems teach the best and only brain to use is the logical brain. And you're absolutely right. I've had that same experience when it comes to school. So using my daughter again as an example, she's 10. She just finished elementary school. Actually, about 2 weeks ago now. we were driving, and she tells me, she has been talking nonstop since she was born in 2013, but she said normal is an entirely made up concept. There is no such thing as normal. Normal is something humans created to make themselves and others feel bad about themselves. So where that I think originated to some degree is she is an advanced reader, and during her library classes in school, they went to the library and they had nothing there at her reading level because she was already a grade or two ahead of the rest of her peers. And the librarian said, well, you have to pick something. Well, can I bring my own stuff? No, you cannot. Right. Now, if that librarian had again come at this as from a place of love and said, oh, we actually don't have the books you need, you should absolutely bring your own, because I want you to succeed. I want you to get better. I want you to keep working at your level and not pull you back to the level that you were at 2 years ago, right? The whole thing would have gone down differently. But that decision wasn't made out of a place of love. That decision was made purely out of a linear thinking, logical brain thinking, saying, no, you are in 4th grade, you have to read 4th grade level things that we have in this library. Not, oh my God, you're reading 6th grade books. Yeah, absolutely. If we don't have that, you should bring your own, right? So I agree, Karen. I think it's very much the way normal systems seem to work. It's very focused on that logical brain. And I'll tell you something, that was going through all of my education, was very much focused on what's up here and not on anything else. And yet I found, I've taken hundreds of tests over the course of my medical career. And I have found very early on, actually, that if I didn't know the answer to a question, if I guessed based on my gut feeling, I was right more often than if I tried to reason through the answers with my brain. So I very quickly learned that if I didn't know the answer to something, I had to trust my gut feeling and just move on. Because when I went back and then tried to reason myself through the answers, more often than not, I would pick the wrong choice. So that's partially why the gut is listed higher up than your logical brain. I know someone had their hands up. Oh, Rory, you had your hand up.
Hi. I'm loving this conversation. Thanks for just glad I clicked on this and found out about this event today. And I qualified as a practitioner in multiple brain integration techniques, which I don't know whether you've heard of that or not, but it's somatic coaching practice, and I work with people around our clients around this areas, and there's a particular technique to take people through it in some ways. And one thing I wanted to bring to it, I also, what I loved, how to distinguish what is a normal function for each brain, is that the heart is about, like you say, love, and it's about how we feel about a situation generally, and the gut would be about action taking. So it's about whether to do something or not do it. So if someone's describing something like an activity they're wishing to do and they're not doing it, there's some kind of freeze response around the gut and the head freezing it too. Anyway, heart being feeling into it, gut being more about action taking. This is very general. And the head brain is amazing for being creative and observing reality, and but not necessarily using it as thinking and decision making in general, as we discussed. And then the pelvic brain being well, that's the whole topic. There's a whole extra part of the studies that I haven't studied around that yet, around actually assessing that in clients, but I haven't felt like I've needed to so far. However, but yeah, that's really very fascinating about the pelvic brain and how that can take over for people. And one last thing I'll say around this is that often for someone to just start to go, okay, I'm going to listen to my heart more, listen to my gut more. They are through my past experiences, so our traumas or the problems or the preferences that we've built up over time, those neural networks have rewired themselves. So maybe we're feeling more with our gut, and we're taking actions with our head, and so to try to listen into those intuitions isn't necessarily easy straight away. And so it's I just wanted to bring that idea that it can take some kind of like workings out around that, and but those guidelines around what am I feeling about this, and last thing is that addictions could be led with the heart, like sad feeling sad and wanting to feel better, and that becomes an action to replenish the pleasure with something that's not so useful. So it's all about recognizing what the head is overtaking things on a lot of the time. One last thing. The theory that one of the I studied osteopathy as well. So there's multiple brain integration techniques that has not said it itself as that there's only 3. Oh, now there's only 4. So there could be an argument. I would say this is a theory, that an argument that the fascia system that holds all the muscles together as a proprioceptive is a brain in itself, or even the skin and talking to the fascia as a sensory experience purely could potentially be its own neural network that could have its, and that's where potentially someone says, I've got a problem here with this arm, and it's actually not a problem anymore because it should have healed. So why is trauma in the arm as such, and why is it associated in the brain as well? So interesting stuff. I love it.
No, I absolutely no. Thanks for sharing, Rod. I think a lot of the stuff you're talking about with the feelings and emotions that go into our decision making, for example, goes back to what Jennifer was saying with that intuition, right? That inward feeling. And there's so many people who are not in tune with their feelings and emotions, and so they can't tap into those areas to make better decisions for themselves, right? Because they're just not in tune with that. So it goes right back to what we were saying a few minutes ago. And coming back to the fascia, the reason I haven't included that yet is twofold. One is I honestly don't know enough about that. And that's quite frankly the base of it. When I was in medical school, everybody was, even if I talk to my orthopedic friends now, they're saying, fascia is absolutely not a thinking word, right? But it's where the nerves are, and there absolutely could be something to it. If you look at a lot of Eastern philosophy, like you said, there's this idea that trauma gets stored in the fascia. Like I said, I don't know a heck of a lot about that yet. But there absolutely could be an argument that is maybe a 5th brain even. Absolutely. I'm not discounting that idea at all. I'm just saying I don't know enough about that. And at least my training was the complete opposite of that altogether. But I am open to the idea, and I definitely need to learn more about that as well, because I think there is something potentially to that idea as well. So no, love that. Thank you for sharing those insights. I guess we'll go to Chrissy.
Hey. I just wanted to add that many times when we have discussions like this and we say, I don't understand why it's not being taught more because we've learned it and it feels so great. I'm super optimistic about the upcoming generations. I mean, I'm optimistic in general because I embody gratitude, but I don't have children, and a lot of my friends do. And I hear of ground and center places popping up for children to practice somatic breathing, and everything we're talking about can be talked about in 80,000 different ways, right? Whether it's the heart math or it's all kind of like leading back to our intuition and breathing and being within our bodies. And when I was younger in the 90s and I needed therapy, it was never even a thought that maybe Chrissy should go to yoga, right? It wasn't a thing. No one was having these discussions. And now I have friends popping up with yoga centers for all children with all sorts of different disabilities, and how much they're doing in communities is astounding. So many times we'll say it's not being done or it should be done more, but this stuff takes time to catch on. humans aren't super quick
Yeah.
to adapt, and we don't love change. So the fact that we're even having these discussions, I think, is such a great practice. And our children, the next generation, will have so much more access than we did. So it's I think it's a pretty exciting time to be alive. And so thank you for bringing your take on how we think and how we can think with our body parts. And I think it's really
Yeah,
funny how like we all
absolutely.
skirt around the fourth brain, and we get a little giggly when you say gonad, right? Like
Yeah. Right.
we're a work in progress. We're coming along. Thanks, everyone.
No, absolutely. You know, the other thing I want to add to that, actually, to what you were saying with yoga, for example, is it's not even that this topic that we're discussing here is so esoteric. I mean, if you go just to basic medicine, in 2 weeks, I'm going to have my conversation with Demetrius Kirk on my podcast. And Demetrius came from Detroit, and he had terrible asthma on multiple inhalers, chronic steroids, and all the results of that: diabetes, cataracts. And nobody ever told him, Demetrius, if you would just leave Detroit, your asthma would be cured. He had to discover that accidentally by himself by doing a vacation in Hawaii. And within a day of getting to Hawaii, he no longer required any inhalers because the air was different, right? And so all his airway problems went away. He's now since moved to Hawaii, and he hasn't been on any asthma treatments, right? But so even on the basic side of things, we don't always get it right, and we don't even look at alternatives. We just say, oh, you have asthma, you need to be in these inhalers. If they don't work, we'll put you on steroids. If that doesn't work, we'll do this, right? And then if that doesn't work, you get a lung transplant. So it's even on the very basic things that we are very slow to adapt to new ideas and actually finding solutions for people. So, you know, this stuff is probably a little bit more a tip of the spear than Demetrius' story, but that's a fascinating story that's going to be coming out in 2 weeks. Sarah, you're next, and Jack, I think you were trying to raise your hand, so I saw you there, so we'll get to you.
You know, Felix, one of the things I think is so interesting about this framework of holistic decision making or scenario assessment or whatever we want to call it is that 1, 2, and 4 are all mechanisms for connecting with others. And to Chrissy's point about things happening in these communities, we know isolation is a growing problem. That's a burgeoning topic of conversation across a wide spectrum of people who are trying to figure out why everybody's so freaking unhappy across the world, both professionally and personally. And yet this methodology, these 4 brains, really provide a way to take into consideration the importance of connecting with others and ourselves, right? And I think that's something that needs to be overtly called out. And the reason I say that is when I think about then the poor, sad, maligned brain number 3, the part that sits inside of our noodle, right? We have this weird dominant social messaging that says that we should somehow be omniscient. And so when we make these logical decisions, we're coming from an informed place. And that is not false, but it's also not true. Like, we do not have all the data. We have some data. We might have more data than we had yesterday or more data than the person next to us. We don't have it all. And so we are constantly in conflict when we're trying to make those logical decisions, and yet we're afraid to acknowledge it. And so I do wonder if part of the challenge with embracing this kind of an approach, maybe not for people in this call or people like us, but the challenge is really bucking against that social expectation, and does, starting from a place of connectivity versus being an army of one or some BS like that, trigger a deep sense of unsettling behavior, because we have to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and we need other people and other inputs to function more optimally. And you said something just a minute ago about the fascia not being a thinking brain, but what percentage of our actual neurons in our grape are used for thinking anyway? Lots of them just keep the boat moving. So I think that's an important distinction as well.
No, absolutely. And what I said with the fascia, I was trained that fascia is not a thinking organ because it's not part of the nervous system. But I think my experience has certainly opened up my eyes to the idea that there are nerves that run along the fascia, that pierce the fascia, that interact with the fascia. So who's to say that the fascia is not involved in the nervous regulation, right? I'm not, just because I was taught in medical school that fascia has nothing to do with the nervous system doesn't mean that that's actually true, right? So, and I agree with you on the connectivity. The interesting thing there, I would throw out is if you listen to Dr. Laurie Santos, the Happiness podcast, a lot of the stuff comes out of happiness actually comes from connections with others and the good things we do for others, right? So actually donating money, for example, for a good cause can make us feel better and feel more connected to our community. So there is something deeply profound. And I've said all along that we are a communal species, right? We're not meant to live this life in isolation. We're meant to live together, love together, grow together, work together. And collaboration will beat competition any day. We've shown this over and over and over again in businesses that have succeeded and businesses that have failed. So we are absolutely meant to work together and do this life together. So I agree with you on that connection piece. And I'm going to throw something out there that many people may find offense to. But I think what you were alluding to, that army of one, the idea that we are so individualistic and we have to figure it out for ourselves. I mean, that was ingrained in my life, in my training as a surgeon, right? It's like, no, there's no one out here to come help you. You're the doctor, you're the surgeon. This is your patient, this is your problem. You have to come up with the answer. That's how I was trained, right? Which is why I've also come to find that a lot of physicians actually make terrible coaching clients because they never ask for help. They don't know that they can. They don't know that they should. They don't know that they could. Because that's just not how we were socialized. That's not how we were raised. And yet, it's in that collaboration that we really grow together as individuals, as a group, as a species, as a community, right? So coming together is so important. So no, I absolutely agree with you on that. I agree with you on all that. It's all about social connections and bringing that home. So the idea that I was going to throw out was, the American dream is actually what's created this individualism, right? The American dream says, if you work hard, you will succeed and you will make a life for yourselves. It's and everybody interprets that you as me, right? Not as us. If we were to look at it instead of the you as a singular pronoun, instead of it's a plural pronoun, we would be looking at the American dream very differently. But because we are so individualistic at that, just yesterday, my girlfriend and I were taking a walk down the walkway behind her house, and there's a whole bunch of houses that are connected to this university trail. And 2 doors down from her is a place that's all shuttered and has all these warning signs on there. Don't enter. We're tired of hiding the bodies. There's a bunch of dogs floating around, barking at everyone walking past. And my first thought was, if you really don't want people in your life, why did you move into a neighborhood where you're surrounded by people? Right? I live in Northwest Ohio. You go 5 miles this way and there's nothing but country. You could live on acres and acres of land and not be surrounded by anyone else. Why did you choose to live in a dense neighborhood and then try to keep everyone out, right? It made no sense to me. But anyways, I know Jack's been trying to chime in here, so we'll get to you, Jack.
So I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you. And Perry has changed my life. There's a lot of faces I see in here. Joanna Brandy, who I have the utmost respect for, and Chrissy, we had a nice conversation. I have no degrees. I am a professional at risk management, but I was blessed with being taught how to breathe. And so I do that professionally in my business world, in my practice. It's called Uribu breathing. I am a yoga practitioner. I've been practicing yoga for 30 years. At 57, if I told someone I was practicing yoga 30 years ago, I was embarrassed and ashamed. And today I wave it around like it's a flag. But I have no degree.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
awesome.
but I have the lessons. You talk about fascia. I am going through my own process and protocol. So as they say in yoga, right, your issues are in the tissues. And so the fascia is the ultimate connector of the tissues. So it's almost like, picture if you cut open a chicken and it's this like rubber bag, it's connecting all of the issues with the tissues. It doesn't necessarily have a neurological feel to it, but I'd like to give everybody a gift I've been using, and I'm going to be doing this professionally. So right now, I have negotiated with companies to bring mental wellness as the first benefit. And here is something I stumbled upon that I've been using for years. And I watch people sometimes when I'm just standing online, and I call them everyday people. And it's the gal at the cash register, and she's just mad at everybody. And she doesn't even know why she's mad. We all don't know why everyone's mad. We're all mad. Everyone's angry, right? And so if everyone can take a moment with me, I will share with you Yaribu breathing technique. It was taught to me by Kiyoshi when I was 21. And the reason why I started doing it was because I was chasing a girl. I went to pick her up, and Chrissy, you'll appreciate it. I went to pick her up at Sprat's, right back in the day, 36 years ago. There were two people sitting at the bar, Joe Klecko. He was the biggest football player, and John Gotti Jr., he was the scariest guy. But there was a pretty girl there. I went and spoke to her, and she was studying karate. So did I. So I went to follow her. And so that's where I met Kiyoshi, my guru. So it was the chasing of a girl of my number 4. I found out her boyfriend was the number 1 teacher there. I no longer chased her. And I said, thank God, don't hurt me. But here is the exercise, everyone. So if everyone wants to do this, I'm going to share with you how you can get connected to your breath, and then you can build upon it with the other practices. So in your hand here is my fat. If everyone just raises their right hand, if you want to play along, you have fat within your tissues. So take your finger almost like a lobster and gently massage your tissues in your hand. Now that you feel it, now just take it below the table. I don't want to see everyone's hand. And it's sitting in my lap. And it's actually resting in between. It's not on the groin area, but it's resting in between the legs, right kind of where my belly is. So if I could just take a breath out, no fancy breath. So now I've just gotten my whole body connected. Now we're going to get to work. If you could gently, and no one ever does it gently, but I'll say it loud and careful, gently roll your shoulders back. Drop them into your hip and let out a breath. Now we're going to roll our shoulders forward, but don't forget to squeeze the fascia. You forgot, you got to hold the fascia. You got to stay connected. Come on, we're in connected. And bring it back down and roll the shoulders back. And breathe out again the second time. That air should be start feeling in that back shoulder. And then the third time, up straight ahead, straight down, breath out, hand up. And now feel your hand. Is your palm sweating a little bit? Can you feel your system settling down? Just bring your hands down. Felix, could you feel your body just kind of settle in just a little bit in those 3 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely noticed some sweating in my palm. I was a little bit of a tingling the sort of the back of my neck as well. Very slight, very, very subtle.
So the subtle and the tingling is just so people get connected. So when they're talking in class, I'll use that as an exercise that will help them open up the door, that when you get into the meditative, the yoga, the workout, the therapy, whatever it is, that's what I use as a door opener, and it's an easy exercise. And again, I'm the least brilliant person in this room, so I'm just grateful that I could share these little tricks of the trade that Yaribu and Kiyoshi taught me a long time ago. And Perry, thank you again for creating the ambiance here. So that's all I got.
Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. That's awesome, Jack. Perry, do you need to raise your hand?
Raising my hand, of course. You know, you're the professor. Of course, I wanted to say immediately. You were saying, you know, you do a donation, you feel better. Oh, fuck yes. We have the angel donors in the Octopus Movement. Become an angel donor. It's $8, and you can be happy immediately. That's a little bit of a joke. Of course, I had to jump on that immediately, Felix. But I do have a serious question, Dr. Felix.
Please.
So this is all very nice. I get it. And then we run into someone who is very active on brain level 3, and specifically with their left brain. And you're thinking, oh my God, you're such a beautiful human, but you're stuck in your level 3 left side. Is there any medical advice except keep breathing, go into meditation zone, open your heart? I'm serious, Felix. You know, what should we do when we run into people like that are so linear, so in the system, so boxed? You have no idea how to reach them. Any advice?
You know, the biggest thing that I found, even through my own coaching experience, is if someone is not open to the idea of something new, there's really just nothing you can do about that. So the only thing you can do in that moment, for at least from my experience, and I would love to hear if anyone else has any better experience, is at least leave a spark of an idea that might start some curiosity about a different way of thinking. It's a big thing that I'm just talking through with one of the with actually a fellow coach who I'm working with together to bring more physicians the freedom that they really should have in their lives. Some of the tools and techniques that we're sharing with them are things that a lot of physicians come to the table and say, "Oh, I've already tried that; it doesn't work." But when we actually pressure them on that a little bit and say, "Well, what did you actually do? Did you follow the right protocol? Did you use the right stuff? Did you how did you actually go about it?" It turns out that they thought they knew what they were talking about, but in reality, they didn't. And so there's going to be some people that are offended at the idea of, especially as a surgeon, you might say, "Oh, I know everything already. I don't need you to tell me what I need to know." But there's going to be some others who are going to be then starting to think, well, maybe there is something I don't know. Maybe I do need to ask more questions. Maybe I do need to find out more. Sometimes that takes time, but at least planting an idea, a seed that your way of thinking may not be the only way is probably the only thing I could think of right off the bat. And this will take time. Some of these people are really difficult to convince otherwise. But if anyone else has any other thoughts, I'm open to suggestions because I haven't found the magic pill quite yet for everyone. I like that too here. What Lydia said, find the 10% that connects you, right? I agree with you. And that goes back to what Sarah was saying about the connection and the collaboration and working together as a community, right? You definitely want to show there's some connection there. Hey, I'm not a stranger, right? I know what you're thinking. I know what you're going through. I've been there. And so I agree with you. I think finding some component of connecting with them is important. Absolutely. That's a fantastic point, Lydia. I love that. Yeah, Rory.
What comes up for me is that when we get confronted by something that we're challenged by, that's our issue. Initially, if we're upset by it in some way, we have an urge to go, oh, that they get to change or something like that. And so I find that for me, it's like I have to notice what I'm feeling first, and then going, what is it about them that what do I want to influence them about, and what are they going to be open to it, and is it something that it's that thing of I check in for myself first and then go, what is there something that I'd like them to see, and exactly what Lydia suggested as well then is to work out that thing of how do you show that you can connect with them or understand them in some way. Compliment. It's not like it's finding that 10% that what I like about what you said is not saying I like what you said. What I like about what you said is finding that thing that even if they're like, I hate this type of people, and it's like, what are they saying? There's always something in it that is something that's they're self-preserving in some way for themselves. So even if it's the most worst thing that confronts you, there's always 10% of something that can be what I like about what you said in some way. Maybe there isn't, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to leave it for a moment until it's that thing of coming at that challenge. Feeling challenged is always going to bring an energy of confrontation. So it's that thing of slowing down, the breathing, relaxing, finding something to complement with, or ask a curious question, have them speak their mind even further until they work out that they're potentially being ludicrous themselves or something.
And sorry to be a party
one thing
pooper.
you mentioned there, Rory.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I have to be a party pooper. The hour is gone already. We're staying, and Felix, the floor is yours. But I wanted just to mention, if you need to hop off and you need to go into another meeting or catch a bus or get the kids or go to buy a croissant or whatever, So happy you're here, and let us know when you're leaving. But the floor is yours, Felix, but the hour is gone already. So it's going so fast, and I'm so happy to see you all here. Floor is yours, Felix.
Well, thank you, Perry. Yeah, actually, I have to run. I have a business meeting I have to be at. But the one thing that you had mentioned, Rory, that I think I should add to all of that as well, that I think it just as a highlight is, to Perry's question, sometimes in those moments, it's not so much for me even about how do I convince the other person that they're wrong and I'm right, right? My thought also goes to, well, what if they're right and I'm the one who's wrong, right? Maybe I have it wrong. Maybe they're not maybe they're not in the wrong. Maybe they actually have a valid point that I just don't fully understand myself. So it goes back to that curiosity, that openness to being willing to accept different ideas and perspectives. Again, going back to the whole idea of fascia, right? That you and I had discussed a little while ago. In medical school, I was taught fascia has nothing to do with the nervous system. There's no memory there. There's function there. It's just it's what encases the muscles. But since then, my mind has been opened up to the idea of, well, maybe there is something to that, right? So I think part of that conversation also is, what does the other person really think? How do they think? Why do they think that way? Because maybe they're right and I'm the one who's wrong, right? So that's also part of all of that. Anyways, that's all I got.
Thank you, Felix. Amazing Octopus Professor. Irma, you want to ask a question quickly?
Yeah, I want to say something that I'm sensing when I'm in these meetings with each other, and this one especially. I came in late, so I don't know what the first 10 minutes were, and the rest of it I was present, totally present. But when we are talking about it, we all, and me too, in a way, we are always talking about it when we are talking about it. The only one from the moment that I was here who was busy not being in the head brain, but in other brain moments was Jack. And all of us were not busy with the other brains, only the head brain, to understand, to vocalize, to verbalize, to everything is constantly here in this situation. Yeah. And it's just something that I'm observing because I'm really a bodily kind of person. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, how come that Jack says, yeah, I'm not that, I didn't do any studies, I don't have any degrees, but take your hand and go and sit and feel and the breath and do it and experience it. And it's just, I'm thinking maybe, I'm hoping that we can, Felix, do a recap and go on about this somewhere, somehow, with a group of people. And maybe it would be really nice to implement the other brains also. The sexual brain would be a bit tricky in a Zoom session, of course, but we have other brains also that we can use within the Zoom session with each other.
Party, Irma, bikini party, and we start
know how
brain
many
number
people
4.
will be into this.
Here we go.
No, but I'm trying to make some kind of point in what I'm saying here. Of course, we are here and doing this with our heads and trying to verbalize everything. Of course, it's part of the way we are together, and also it's part of the octopuses. There are a lot of heady brainy people together. I just wanted to add this because it's not oh, it's not good or whatever, because I'm doing it also, so I don't care. But it's just something that I'm observing, and it's like, okay, wow, okay, this is the way we approach our 4 or even 5 brains with one brain.
Yes. Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. I'm always open for more. So let's make it happen. I'm good with that. Cool.
Let's do that,
I'm already late
Felix.
to meet with my
let's
but we
you-
shall. Yes.
you need to run.
Thank you all.
Thank you everybody for attending, being here. It will be on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Felix, for creating this space. It's really awesome. Thank you guys. Love you all. Have fun, behave, and wear a bikini. Bye.